Welcome to episode 1 of the Grassroots to Greatness podcast. We're here to help grassroots coaches receive ongoing coaching education so that they can keep improving as coaches and improve what they're delivering to their grassroots football players. We've got a number of podcasts, our YouTube channel, as well as our Patreon subscription service, and loads of free content on all our Coaches Club social pages. In episode 1 today, we're going to be meeting with Alex Fitzjohn. He's a coach I've worked with for many years. He's worked from grassroots football all the way up to academy football, and I've worked with him for about 15-20 years now, so he's got loads of experience working in the grassroots game. Alex is going to talk about his coaching journey, how that started at grassroots and how he moved all the way up to academy football, and how he's stepped back from that now and is focusing more on his grassroots coaching. We will also talk about his best experience he's had in coaching, what he's done and what he's achieved, all the different tours he's been on, all the different players he's coached. We'll also talk about the importance of values. So Alex puts a huge importance on teaching values through football and how we can do that. And he will give lots of general tips for grassroots coaches throughout the podcast. So enjoy the podcast and hopefully you'll take a lot from it to help you with your coaching. Alex, do you want to introduce yourself and your coaching background, your qualifications, your experience, and just tell everyone about yourself?
Perfect, yeah. So obviously my name's Alex, been working with Seb. I've known Seb for probably, close to probably if not longer than 15 years. And I first started coaching when I was at university, went to uni and did a sports science degree with coaching. Kind of coached some of the university teams there, and then previously to coaching at uni, I did a little bit for Cheltenham Athletic Community Trust, and that's kind of where our paths crossed in terms of a coaching background, working with like young children there, and then went on to uni because it was a career that I wanted to choose and wanted to follow. Did my level 2, the old level 2 at the old David Beckham Academy. Up in Greenwich, and then from there after university again teamed up with Seb, and we kind of worked on TSE a bit, as well as working at Cheltenham Athletic Community Trust. Kind of a vast experience in that sort of department. Through my time at TSE, I've obviously worked with lots of different players of all different abilities and all different ages. And then I also moved on to Gillingham's Academy, coaching there. Started off as like an assistant coach, moving up to head coach for the under-11s for sort of 6 seasons. And then kind of here now. Not at Gillingham anymore because life and kids have taken over. My own 2 kids, and carrying on my coaching journey. Still here with TSE and absolutely loving it still.
Great. So if we go all the way back, something that I've always found quite interesting, you said you've done that old level 2.
Yeah.
Coaching courses have changed a lot over the years. Obviously, I've been involved in delivering them. What was your experience of your level 2?
I really enjoyed my level 2. I actually thought it was a massive step up from level 1. I thought level 1 was more of obviously like, as it's called now, your introduction to coaching. But level 2 tested you a lot more in terms of your technical detail that you was given in a session, and it made you really think about what you're delivering and does it work on the technical aspect that you want to achieve. Obviously other aspects as well, but I think mainly for me the technical detail I was given to each individual players was something that I took away from it, and I think actually it's really beneficial. And I think especially then going into UEFA B, I think it's even more technical and tactical. But I think that stepping stone from the old level 2, from level 1 to level 2, I thought that was the biggest difference for me personally.
Yeah, I found those step ups from the old coaching badges huge. And obviously then it was youth awards came in, and now they've kind of merged into one. But I think probably the technical detail that is taught and was probably demanded back then is probably not as high now, and it's something that probably coaches, in my opinion, from my experience, coaches find that part harder to find and to access now.
Absolutely.
And we'll come on to the Gillingham bit then. So well, I mean, obviously we worked at Gills together for a long time, and that was where I thought you really learn a lot from being within that environment and within around the coaches.
Yeah.
So what was your experience there? What did you learn from being in that setup compared to previously being in a grassroots setup?
So firstly, for me, it was quite daunting, like going in from like I said, like a grassroots kind of setup straight into full academy football. And it kind of questioned yourself whether you're good enough as a coach. And I think that was the biggest challenge for me going in originally. But you learn so quickly, like learning on the job as such, but you learn from all those around you. And you learn a lot from the players, to be honest. You learn a lot from their capabilities of things they can and can't do and the standards they are. So the standards they set themselves is then you're then trying to better that, to try and obviously make them better as individuals and as teams. But I think that for me, like initially that it was quite scary, to be honest. Working, I was really young when I went in, and working with coaches who in the room I thought I was probably the bottom of the pile, and then working my way up by learning through others and just making sure that the detail I was given was absolutely spot on, because because they were so young. The players were so young, but they're on that elite level journey where they need all the information possible that's relevant to them. So you had to make sure that you were giving them the right information. I think that was something as a coach I then went away and learned quickly from, podcasts weren't really a thing then really when I first started, but learning through books and learning through coaching courses about all the information that you need to give to like an under 10 player or an under 11 player. So that's kind of, it was, like I said, it was daunting, but it's such a great experience for me as a coach at the right time. Because like I said, when I first went in, I didn't think to myself that I was ready for it and as confident as I could be, but you learn quickly. And it was a great environment to learn.
I think that's the key for me. The thing that I remember when I first went there, I had the senior staff basically on my shoulder every session, but not on my shoulder to criticise or to intimidate or to make sure you're doing things right. They're on your shoulder to help and support and talk to you about the little technical details, the things that you're looking at. And I think one of the biggest lessons I had there was, instead of just looking at that player needs to get better at receiving on the back foot or receiving on or playing with their weak foot, it came a lot more in depth of, if this player needs to be at this stage in 4 years, these are the things we need to develop now. Yeah. And you worked at the younger age groups, didn't you? So what was your kind of focus, would you say, around there with the players that you worked with?
Well, when I first went in, it was kind of more of like, they used to call it like the sort of individual challenge coaches. So I would take small groups out at a time and then improve not only improving their not weaknesses, but things that they could do better, but also to try and improve their strengths. So as a kind of individual coach, then it was highlighting what they specifically need, and then designing sessions or just giving feedback during the game as to what they've done well or what I think that they could have done better, and what to try next time, basically. Working with the younger players was challenging in itself. But I think a lot of the things that I worked on, again, coming back to the level 2, was just all technical stuff. Like they really need, because we go back to when we're working with like under 7s, under 8s and things like that. It's like we need to make them as good as they can be on the ball, so that when they get older, the decision making process then becomes a lot more. An area that you work on a lot more, whereas in the younger ages I think that technical element is so important. Even I was working with sort of under 9s, 10s and 11s, so for me it was more like just making sure that they're so good technically that they've then got a really good base to build on going forward into the next phase.
And I think, so I see in grassroots football a lot is coaches worrying about playing longer passes or making sure they can everyone's spread out and they can switch play and stuff like that. And you need to go back a few stages first and go, if you don't focus on getting their first touch right or their ability to turn the body out to receive on the back foot right, especially at 7s, 8s, and working on that a lot, it's not going to matter if they can then hit a 30, 40 yard pass. If they can't control the ball and get that ball just perfectly out of their feet so that their second touch is then a pass, they're going to need 3 touches before they can switch play. So it's getting that foundation right. And I think that's really important. It's something that sometimes we miss and we try and step ahead too quickly. And what's interesting there is that thought of an individual coach. And in terms of grassroots football, a lot of coaches are by themselves, but a lot of them will have like an assistant coach or a third coach. And I think there's so much value in finding out what players can improve on as individuals, or as you said, make a strength even better. And just take those players out for 10 minutes. If you've got players that need to work on their left foot, get them to come out for 10 minutes working on technique with their left foot, constant repetition, then back into the main group. And you can use your assistant coaches to try things like that. And they still get all their time with the main group and work on the decision makings, but getting that technical foundation, I think, is massive.
Yeah, so like coming back to that, just to kind of how I worked in training. So on a Tuesday and a Thursday, I mainly worked in the foundation phase, which was under 9s, 10s and 11s at Gills. And all it was working on those 2 evenings was individual based things. So I might even have players over 2 age groups that had very similar traits as to what they need to work on or what areas they need to develop or improve. But then on a match day, I would then stay with one age group. So it's mainly the under 10s, but I would stay with an age group, and then I can then clearly see what they're trying to do and how they're getting on with their individual challenges. So I wasn't looking at it from like a tactical point of view on how do we need to set up against this opponent. I was more looking at it and going, oh, I'm just literally like a player cam. I'm just watching you or 3 or 4 players and just to seeing how they do. So I then get a better understanding of what they need. And like I say, just bringing them out for 10, 15 minutes, small groups, 2s and 3s, even individually. But if you do that over a course of a season, that element will massively improve. And I think it's so important, especially at the younger age.
Brilliant. So moving on now, what are your most memorable moments in coaching?
Okay, so I think whilst we're talking about Gills, my most memorable moment was last season I was at Gills, under 11s. We played AFC Wimbledon at home on the 3G. We're usually on the grass at Canterbury, but we played on the 3G, 9-a-side. And for those of you who don't know, when we play AFC Wimbledon, you'll know this one. That's kind of your benchmark. I was lead coach at the time, and that's kind of your benchmark. I think AFC Wimbledon have a very well run academy, a very good sort of like area of players, a pool of players to choose from. So when we played Wimbledon, you always know that was kind of your benchmark as to sort of see how you're going to do that season. And when you said about talking about other coaches or senior coaches on your shoulders, just watching, I had a guy called Jeff, who was the FAS, one of our assessors that come to work with us, mentor. He watched and filmed the session. I was mic'd up for that one. I had a couple of other foundation phase lead coach, another FA coach, and the Gills coach developer was also there. So I had 4 members of staff watching me. Well, not me, but the team. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
And we went 4-0 down in the first 20 minutes, and I kind of changed my coaching style. I was like, they need help, and it doesn't come back. Like results are not massively important, but it was more of the performance. They needed lifting. They needed elevating to a new level just to compete. So we went into the second period, and I really helped them by using positive communication when mainly they were off the ball. So when we was out of possession, about just trying to go and press, get the high energy levels, win your individual battles, and really try and elevate their performance just through me being really positive and kind of, not running up and down the touchline or anything like that, but just having a real positive manner about everything we did. And when they went on the ball, I didn't say a word. It was more like you do you on the ball, you make your decisions, but off the ball, you needed helping. And I think the second period we won that 4-0, so it was 4-4 overall. And at Gills we used 4 periods rather than 2 halves. And the third period we won again, and then the last period, I actually, last 10, 15 minutes I didn't say anything because they had risen themselves to a new standard. So I then just took my foot off the pedal and was like, well, they're there. I don't need to say anything now. They were driving each other, they were helping each other, which was quality to see. And I think overall we only conceded 4 goals in the first period. After that we didn't concede another goal, and we won 11-4. And that for me was a real good experience of being a coach, knowing when they needed help. Not I said not in every aspect, but it was mainly off the ball.
Yeah.
And I think going back to those 4 members of staff watching, they were like, "Why did you change?" And I could just clearly see the team and the boys needed help. And they said, you were so right to do what you did, because they needed that little bit of a boost. And then you then didn't say anything in the last period, so they drove themselves forward and carried on with a great performance, to be honest. And that was for me one of my most memorable moments in terms of being at Gills. Being at TSE, just the tours we've got coming up. We've got one in Barcelona, and the last one we went on was 2017.
To Barcelona,
yeah, something like that. And I think that was one of my most memorable football tours at TSE. Memorable moments as a coach. I had my own team, but we had 8 teams there that year, and it was just unreal. Just being with the players and the parents, and we had such a good time. And for those kids that played, I still some of the boys there now, and they're like under 18s and getting onto first team level football. And even when I see them in the street or at a session, they'll still remember that moment, and I still remember it as clear as day. So yeah, I absolutely loved that time. But I think they're, for me as a coach, they're two of my most fond memories, I'd say.
I think that's also one of my best memories from TSC is that tour. We took 200 odd people. Some teams competed really well. Some teams found it really tough. Everyone had an amazing time. And that's the thing about the tours that I like, is the football is just a part of the tour. And I think that's something to always kind of relate back to in football, is you just go, you have amazing experiences with people and with players and with families that they will never forget. Never forget. That was years and years ago now. We always have players and parents talk to us about it. So, and that comes back to the old saying of, it's not, people remember how you make them feel. Not what you tell them, it's how you make them feel. And that's that feeling of like togetherness as a group, the experience, just everyone together was amazing. And that's something that we all hold on to, and we know we love that time, and looking forward to going again. Going back a little bit, there's this massive debate that goes on now, and I want to get your opinion on it. I'm not shy with my opinions, but I'll get yours on this opinion of, at one end of the scale is just let them play, let them figure it out themselves, and another end of the scale is tell them what to do. Where do you sit on that?
It's a tough one. I think it's age dependent, but also I think they need. It's like coaching. There's no kind of right or wrong, but I think they need both of those things. I mean, if I was just tell them all the time, then I think that would have a negative impact from if they then don't have me on the side, if they go to a different age and they're used to that, they then go, well, the coach told me to pass, or the coach told me to dribble. And I think that's where you have, then there will be like a negative experience from the players, because they're thinking, well, I had someone who made my decisions for me. But I still think you need it at times. But like I said, going back from when I used, even when I still do it now, when they're on the ball, I try not to say as much. It'd be more like, go and explore yourself, because that's the decision making they need. Sometimes off the ball, where you can see the whole pitch, you kind of help them a little bit. But I think it's still, for me, it's 50-50. Well, not 50-50, I don't know really. It's all dependent on age. It's a tough question.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective on it is it's like a bit of a sliding scale, and you need the skill set to do all of them. So for me, if you're just letting them play and letting them figuring it out, I don't agree with that. I agree with it to a certain extent, and I think the more you let players make decisions and the more they figure it out themselves, the better.
Yeah.
But it's not always going to work. And I use an example of, I watched a session up at St George's Park years and years ago, academy team, a very well run academy, and they'd done a session on basically let the players figure it out on playing out from the back. And it took probably about 35 minutes out of the 45-minute sessions for the fullbacks to both split to create loads of width for them to play out. And then they were like, right, now they've got that and they figured out themselves, that's going to be more ingrained in their learning. Well, my thought on that was, I don't agree with that way of doing it. It's taken them too long to do something that structurally you always want them to do as a team. So my thoughts on that were, tell them, when the goalkeeper's got the ball, I want you two to split.
Yeah.
And I want my midfielders to start high and then think about rotating. And from that point, you go, once you've got in those positions, now you figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And now you be creative. That's how I would approach it. And then how goes on a match day is it's fine sometimes to have a minute or two where you go a bit command and try and G them up and go, right, get this going. Like, that's fine for a minute or two, but then if you've got to do it for the whole game, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
So do it for a couple of minutes, make sure that they understand it. And when you think they understand it, step back, be quiet, and then you can check their learning, see if they can do it.
So I think you really need a mix of both. And like you say, it's knowing when to do either. At the right time, because like I say, if you just let them play and figure it out, if the answer they're always getting is wrong, then there needs to be some correction there. They need help in some way, shape or form. But I think, for me personally, from my experience, it's knowing when I do it and when I don't. Because I think even at every age group, you still need both of those elements at every age group. And
the last thing to really, I think, on this as well is, by the time they get to senior football, 16, 17, 18, adult football, the game is so quick. Someone at the side of the pitch shouting pass or check your shoulder or turn, it's already happened. They've already made their decision by the time you've shouted.
Yeah.
So you've got to prepare them at younger ages to make those decisions, whether that's by talking to them, by leaving them, by asking them questions, setting up scenarios, whatever. You've got to prepare them by that stage to start to be a bit more self-sufficient.
And I think I listened to Eddie Jones when he was the England rugby coach, and some of the things he was saying, that he allowed the first team players, first 15, even on a training day, he wouldn't show up for a session, but he was basically in the change rooms or in the clubhouse or wherever, and he'd have cameras all over, and it was just testing them to say, there's no equipment out. Training was meant to start at 9:00, for example. No coaches came out, but because he had so many leaders in that team. And we're talking, this is senior level of rugby, they all got all the equipment out, every session spot on, and he literally watched it for 3 hours. And, it's really good that they probably had, one, he would have set standards previously, but two, all of their decision making, they know what exactly to do on the pitch because they've had experience of probably that type of coaching, whereas they've needed help at times, other times they've got to figure it out. So I think even when they get to senior level, they're still left to their own. Go on, give it a go. I'm not saying that, I'm talking that's elite level stuff, but it just goes to show you that all players need to be able to make their own decisions.
Okay, so as you've talked about, life's changed now, kids, family life, we've all experiencing that at the moment and the changes that has on your coaching career and pathways. Something that I'm coming up to, you're still a couple of years away from. So if you were going to coach your kids' team, under sevens, how would you do it? How would you be coaching the team? And what would you like to think your behaviours would be like coaching that team?
It's a good question because obviously it will come to that stage potentially. I've got two boys, they might not like football, but whatever sport, I'd like to think that because I'm from a football coaching background or a coaching background, that if they do play a sport, I'd like to try and help them. But yeah, good question. I think for me, I think I would really make it positive, like real positive environment where mistakes are just, it doesn't matter if you make a mistake, and just try and keep it fun as possible. Because I think football gets so serious so quickly that actually you kind of lose. I mean, and I know I did when I got to sort of under 16s, under 18s. You lose a love of it and you kind of think like, I don't like this anymore, I don't want to play anymore. And I would love for my kids, if they were to play football, would just, even at my age, just love football. Because I think football gets too serious too quickly. But actually I think under sevens, let them play. Like we're going back to that scale, sometimes they're going to need help and coach intervention, but let them play and love coming to the session. And I think for me, that's something that's really important. I think that's what I would love my kids to go, Dad, I love coming to this football session.
I like the fact, by the way, you said you lost your love for it around under 18s, and that was when I started coaching. Yeah. So cheers for that.
No, I just think like it become like not from your coaching, but for me personally, I just think like I was like I don't know what is football something that I want to play, or rather do I want to get into coaching? Yeah. And I think I'd rather coach it rather than play it.
So what I will find interesting, on a serious note, is when you start coaching is, I think you're very good at that positive environment. You're very good at allowing players to make mistakes, but you're very demanding of high standards. Yeah, so how do you think that will, like just in reality, how do you think that will?
I think it's coming back to like knowing your players. So like for example at TSE, our academy sessions, some of the players I'm working with are of very similar ability, which is why we try and group them into depending on the age groups and stuff, but in terms of ability wise, so we try and keep the standards really high. But coming back to like especially under sevens, you're going to have children of different abilities, and some kids that will like just first started, some kids that have played since they were 5, and you know there'll be different levels of ability, but also different commitment levels. But I think it's then teaching the right values rather than being like you need to be as good as you can be and driving standards through that and not allowing mistakes. I think it's actually teaching good values. Like even like taking care of their staff and just showing respect to each other and behaviour. I think I'd rather teach the good values from such a young age, so that actually you teach them to be good football players, but also good people, and you're teaching them good life skills. Yeah,
I think that's something that I'm gonna we as a company, as coaches, I think we've always naturally demanded kind of full effort.
Yeah.
And that's...
don't get me wrong, I still think my standards will still be high as a coach, but it's then it's basically how you deliver those messages to the kids. So you just kind of want to make it as simple as possible. You still want them to really try their hardest. I think for me that's a given, and that's something that I would still try and instill in them. But I still think really scale it back, really go what do they need at 7 years old in terms of like not just technical ability, but like their social skills and things like that. So, and that's really scaling it back to make it so serious. It's like, I just think, like I said, going back, it's so serious.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's going to be interesting. Like I say, I've got that coming up. You'll have it coming up fairly soon.
It's easier said than done though, right?
Yeah, and I think it's just reality. There's no lies about it. No. We've gone from coaching grassroots. We've always coached grassroots. We've gone up to academy football, and we've worked together in the business. We always demand like high standards and full effort and professionalism, and so it's going to be like that's the reality. That's going to be a challenge when you 100%. Get the kid that's in your grassroots team that's probably not really that bothered. They're there to play. They're there to have fun.
Their mates,
And I suppose that's probably where you've got. I always talk about like alignment, like of your values and the players and the parents, and having clear communication about that. Like my personal point of view, I don't care how good a kid is at football. Whether they can dribble around 10 players, whether they can't control a ball, I couldn't care less. But I like working with players that listen, engage, try and take things on. You then get other challenges with that, is because we always kind of push it as well, that if a kid's not listening or not behaving, you've always got to ask why. Yeah. Because actually, how can you help them? And it's what are the reasons behind that? So I just think that's going to be an interesting kind of challenge, because we always reflect on ourselves and our own coaching and how we can be better. And I think going into that environment, and then also the challenge of coaching your own kid, which we've never really had to do yet. So that will be, it's going to be interesting. We'll maybe check back on that in a couple of years and another podcast. see how
we'll give up coaching by then. I think. Coaching your own kids.
Biggest challenges you've faced in coaching?
Biggest challenges, I think when I first started at Gills, like I mentioned earlier, that was a huge challenge for me. Like I said, it was quite daunting. It was quite nervous. going in and working in a professional environment. And like I said, I did it when I was quite young and kind of cut really early in my coaching career, and it was like, well, am I ready for it? So that went through my mind, those sort of decisions and those thoughts. So that was probably one of my biggest challenges. Doing my UEFA B again, because that was a huge step up. You know, going back, I say the old UEFA B, but you know, the level when we went from level 2 to UEFA B was huge, because you weren't just looking at technically in smaller areas and 5v5s. You then go into full on 11v11, all the tactical elements behind it, and then you're giving, you know, you're trying to again give the right messages at the right times, but you're not just going about how you can control a football. It's more about like how you press and the angles of approach and absolutely everything. I think that again was a huge challenge, and trying to because I was always from like a youth background. I've never really done like 11v11 full on football. I have now, but when I was doing my UEFA B, and it was then translating those messages and then breaking them down for a kid who was playing 5v5, because if you think that's the level they need to be, well, where's block number 1? How do they start? Where's the beginning of the timeline? So yeah, it's then breaking it down and then going, right, well, how can I deliver that message to a 6, 7, 8-year-old? Not the same message you'd give to a first team player, but you know, a much younger level. So I think there are two of my main challenges.
Things we've done over the years is we've done that in our coaching curriculum. We go, right, if a player's going to press and be able to defend a 1v1 when they're an adult, we want them to be able to get their approach run right, speed, distance that they get to the attacker, body shape, how they can show them a certain way, when they're going to engage and win the ball, etc. So they need to be able to, and decisions of when and where to press. Yeah. So that's what the adult needs to look like, and we've stripped that back into phases. So actually, when we're working with 7-year-olds, all we worry about is can they get in quick and slow down. Yeah. That's it. That's all. We just need that foundation. If you can get in quick and slow down, and you do that every time, then as you get when you get to the next stage, you'll go, right, bit of body shape.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you try and break it down into 2 elements at an age.
And so those building blocks, and that's where I think where B Licence massively challenged me, because it went straight into, right, well, this is when they're adults, playing 11 aside, how they need to do all that. And I'd probably worked from the foundations up.
Yeah, so I'm not kind of new to the 11-a-side newish.
I've not worked the finished article and broken it down, and that was a big lesson for me as well on that. So yeah, that was a big challenge, and I think one of the other challenges that we've then found over the years is obviously then that balance of coaching and family life, coaching with the business being so busy. That's probably something that we've both experienced as well.
Yeah. I think another challenge from a sort of a TSE perspective and a business perspective is obviously, you know, like, I mean, my role within the company at the moment is kind of in charge of the elite level football and our elite programs, and where I think one of my challenges on a day-to-day basis that I find very difficult is when we've got 4 centres in terms of football academies. When we have like pro fixtures or fixtures in general, it's then making sure we're inviting the right players and things like that. And I think that's a challenge personally, because you don't want to upset players that you want to take or you can't take at certain times, but it's then, you know, you're always going to upset someone. And I think that is a real, and I don't take it lightheartedly, because I always get questioned by parents and things, and they say like, why has he not been selected? And it's really difficult, because ultimately the answer I still am giving is probably not the answer, or it's not going to make you feel any better, for example. So yeah, that's a day-to-day challenge that I find really difficult, especially being obviously a parent as well. You know, because you don't want to upset children, but you try and get as many fixtures as possible.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and that is something tough, and again, something we're probably going to go through from the other side of it over the years of our kids get told, or maybe you're not invited to this one, or if they get into a grassroots team and those grassroots teams push on, and they're like, well, he's not quite good enough.
Yeah, so he's not going to be in that one,
etc. So,
it's kind of dealing with setbacks, which I think football you deal with so many setbacks.
Yeah.
And I think it's then it's just the mentality that you have as an individual to then go, well, I'm now going to push on.
Yeah, I'm going through the conversation with my eldest at the minute of it's okay to lose. Because he won't accept losing at the minute. And if he's watching a team on the telly, and he'll say, instead of just watching a game, he'll go, who do we want to win? And I'm like, I don't really mind. And I'm like, just watch it. And he's like, no, who do I want to win? And then he'll pick a team, and if that team don't win, he's fuming. And now I always play against him in the garden, and I've now had to start trying to get that resilience and understanding to him. I've now purposely started beating him a lot, whereas I used to let him win. And I know people will argue you shouldn't let him win, but we're just having fun. I wanted him to love playing, and he loves it. But now I've started beating him. And the first time it happened, it didn't go down well. And now he's getting a bit better at it. But I was like, I've got to make him start lose because he's getting the ump. And when he starts playing football, he's going to lose a lot. And you've got to learn to deal with it. That's another challenge. So at the moment, I'm 6 games up this week. So that's going all right. But I'm backing that up. That I'm trying to teach him some valuable lessons. So you talked a little bit. Make myself feel better as well. So you've talked about this a little bit, but how, and the purpose of this podcast as well, and the purpose of the Coaches Club. So on the Coaches Club, obviously we give out free sessions. We've got a Patreon channel where we're doing session plans for coaches and giving advice videos all the time, so that we really want to help coaches have consistent help. At the moment, they go on a coaching course, you go away from it, and then you're kind of left to your own devices to crack on. And we want them to have something to help them develop the whole time. What have you done over the years? You've mentioned on it a little bit, but how did you develop yourself as a coach away from courses?
So originally I went on, I did my level 1, done my level 2, did my UA4B, I've then done my youth awards, I've done various other coaching courses, so online or face-to-face. So they massively help, obviously. Working with the FA and their coach mentors and the courses they offer. So that's quite a simple way of how to improve by going on coaching courses. But also working with yourself and other coaches at Gills and coaches at TSC, by watching, observing and asking questions, by just going to watch their session and going like, oh, why have you done that? Because I wouldn't have done that, and then they give you the answer and you go, I didn't really think of it like that. Like that's completely, not change your mind, but like it's made you think differently. And I still do that now. Like I watch Joe, for example, and I'll see some of his coaches' sessions and I'm thinking, oh, that's brilliant. Like I'm going to give that a go. And you're always learning. And even watching some of our younger coaches we've got coming through, I watched some of their sessions. Like I've watched George in a PE lesson, totally non-football related. I can't remember, he was doing like gymnastics lesson, and he was doing a session, and it was amazing. Like the children were, the way he was using like cross-curricular things and using the way he spoke and his vocabulary was superb. And I was thinking, well, actually, you can learn a lot through like individual sports, for example, and how they coach their athletes, as well as like watching rugby or watching other team sports. So I think watching coaches, asking questions, but a lot of things as well. I watch a lot of like YouTube videos, watch a lot of like individual coaches when they're doing one-to-one sessions, because the technical detail that they're giving in there has to be perfect, because they're working with a player one-to-one and they want to improve them quickly, and you're thinking, how can we deliver those messages in group sessions? So yeah, YouTube videos, listening to podcasts, listen to quite a lot of podcasts now. Don't really listen to music in the car, so even if it's like a 20-minute journey, then you can listen, you can get some real good insight from professionals that used to play. So yeah, I think just being a sponge, just literally, don't just think you're the best. And and you think I've got nothing to learn because even now I'm also like, you know, I'm good at what I do, but I'm also thinking I need to be better just because I want to be. You know, on a selfish point of view, I don't want to just sit still and just be like, oh, I'm good, that's fine. I'm always looking at how I can improve. And I know life takes over, and there's always that, oh, there's not enough time, but there's always time. Like I said, like a 10-minute journey into work, I pop a podcast on rather than listen to music and take quite a bit out of it, really. Literally just, there's lots of different methods. I think, to be honest, it's much easier now that you've got the power of social media and YouTube, that you can watch a lot of sessions and a lot of coaches that work in professional academies now in the top game. Like there's, you know, you've got like websites that offer those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it's so easy now to be able to go away and improve yourself. But it comes down to how committed you are as a person and sort of the drive and want to improve. But yeah, I think there's lots of different methods that you can really use to your effect.
I think that's it. The key to it is how much do you want it. And for those coaches, a lot of coaches, this isn't just be grassroots coaches. Yeah. And they coach a kids team, and that's it. They're involved in. That's fine. The coaches that want to push on to academy level, professional level, it's so much sacrifice, and people have to have a real reality check sometimes of what it takes to even get an opportunity to go that high. And it's probably easier to get into academy football now than it ever was, as long as you've got the qualifications and you've got a good reputation. I think the reputation's massive, because we always know that when we worked in academy football, everyone knew everyone, and your reputation was massive. So I mean, going back to my journey, I was quite lucky. I learnt quickly because I went into Gills, and I had to learn quickly. But that I was kind of that right place, right time, and the reputation that I had working with TSC and working with yourself, because obviously you was already there, and then there was an opening that came up, and then I put myself forward, and I managed to get into the academy level straight away. Whereas other coaches that I've worked with here, their route has been different. They've had to go up to like development centres at Gills and advanced centres at Gills, and I'm not saying that's the be all and end all, but actually if you want to progress as a coach, you want to be working in and around the best coaches locally. So that was the environment that I wanted, and I learned so much through that environment because I'm quite a hands-on person. I can't just read something and then it be instilled in my memory and I can just do it. I have to see it and then really give it a go, and then kind of gather feedback from that and then see how I can improve next time. But I think I was quite lucky that I managed to get in quickly, so young into my coaching journey, so that I was then literally like everything that they were saying I was sticking. And I think that's massively helped me. But yeah, there are so many different other avenues. I think the thing is to say though, although you got in there quickly and young, you probably had 3 or 4 years of coaching full-time behind you.
That was my
Joe. So you're working in our sessions, in the schools, with Charlton. So you had a few years of part-time working, 3 or 4 years of then full-time coaching, and the value you get from coaching in schools and lessons, the things you learn. But then, like you said, you're going into it's completely different.
Yeah, it's completely different level, yeah.
So in general, coming towards the end of our discussion a little bit, so a couple more things to go through. What tips and advice would you give to grassroots football coaches? So the coaches working out every weekend with their kids' teams and stuff like that. A couple of tips, any advice you'd give them? I
think going back to when I was if I coached my own children, is just try and keep it fun and enjoyable. Because remember that we're still working with kids, you know, and we want them to love it, you know, because we love it, and we love the game, and we love the sport. So just try and don't always have the pressure of you need to go and score, I'm going to give you a $5 for a goal and things like that. Like just allow them to play football because they love it and they want to be there. But I also think try and instill good values. So like I look at coaching differently now. Like I always, like especially last few years, I've looked at like how we can improve not the person just to be good at football, but how we can improve the person to be better when they get older, and because you know not everyone's going to be a football player. So how we can make them as good as they can be to go on and do anything they want. and they need certain skill sets and certain values. And I think teaching those through sport is massive. And I know we're quite big on that at TSC. But even as a coach now, I always really want to try and improve them as a football player, but that each individual as a person. But yeah, still have good standards and still try and instill the good thing. Still try and instill good messages, but keep it fun, keep it enjoyable. Make sure they've got a love for it. Try and make it pressure free, because as soon as they get older and older, it just takes over their lives, and also it just becomes so serious that I think actually scale it back a little bit, and make sure they love it, because that's why we play. And as a coach, try and keep messages simple. Try and keep sessions intense, because you want them working hard. Because if you think of it, if you're talking like grassroots coaches and you've only got like an hour session, you want to make sure that they're having as many touches on the ball as possible. You're not stopping it all the time, because you want them working and you want them to improve. So actually, standing still, they're not really going to improve. You want them actually playing football. And I think keep messages simple. Don't overcomplicate things in terms of a grassroots level. But like I said, if they love football, and that's the main important thing, and they keep coming back, they'll always want to improve, and they always will improve. Brilliant.
And it's interesting. The values thing's massive for us, and because 99.9% of the players we coach won't be professional footballers, but 99.9% of them will probably need to go and get a job.
Yeah.
So it's preparing them for life, like those life skills that we really push. Last question. What is your future in coaching?
That's a good question. I think where I've had 2 kids, I haven't really thought about where my future lies in coaching. I haven't had time to think about it. The job. I absolutely love coaching, and obviously I run from the business point of view. I do a lot of admin work and stuff behind a desk. But when I actually get out on the grass or the 3G and actually start coaching, I think that's the bit that I love. So I'll never ever want to stop that part. But I think my future, I also really enjoy working with our younger coaches and developing them and being a part of their journey, because it would be amazing, if we have some of our coaches that are with us now, if you're part of their journey to go on and maybe do bigger and better things than me, which would be really good, and that, I'd take a lot of joy out of that. So working with coaches, I would maybe more of a mentoring role in that sort of aspect, but I still love coaching, and I'm to be honest, I'm really looking forward to the next stage part of my coaching, where I have 2 kids, about being a part of their journey in football. And I think now it's more a fact of me of like trying to give back, give back maybe locally to other coaches, our coaches coming through, but also working with, if I take my kids' teams, is then give back to the other kids that are going to be a part of that team. Maybe more of a mentoring role, rather than always coaching. Working closely with our coaches.
Brilliant. Well, that's the end of it. Thanks for coming in.
No worries.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Hope everyone enjoyed the podcast, and we'll be back with plenty more, and we will see you soon.